Before we start the pod this week, I just want to give a shout out to a local business. This year, we are working with a number of businesses from Teesside just to give them some awareness. And this week, it's Ruse Clothing, and they're a company where fashion meets family spirit. They're based in Teesside, and they wanted to create a brand which identified with them. They were fueled by the frustration of not being able to find design which truly resonated with themselves. So they decided to embark on a journey to try and craft their own brand and to find clothes which identifies with them. And they're really, really cool. Go and find them. Go and give them a search. It's www.roos, R-O-O-S, clothing, but clothing is clo.co.uk/Boro Breakdown, and you'll be able to find their really cool merch. And the link's going to be in the description of the podcast and also on YouTube as well. So do give them a follow and a search. But for right now, we're going to talk about the defeat to Millwall, the news from the week, look ahead to Huddersfield, and answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is all your Boro Match Day chatter in a pod.
Support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Avenelli coming alive again. Juninho wants the ball played to him. Avenelli spots out. Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana, and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Match Day chatter in a podcast. And Boro suffered an opening day defeat to the hands of Millwall. Boro have now went 9 years without an opening day win, and misery and a rainy day in Teesside. But guys, how are you feeling? We're going to do something a little bit different this week. I want to hear your one key takeaways from the game yesterday, and also Tom, you had a takeaway last night, so I'm keen to hear about that as well. But Dana, what was your one key takeaway from the game yesterday?
Probably that I severely underestimated the step back from the team at the very end of last season and the team at the very beginning of this season. I knew that we'd take a hit in terms of creativity without Ryan Giles, but I thought that the squad would have enough within it to get by. Like, I didn't think that we were going to be as effective in terms of creativity without Giles, but I thought we would be able to just get by in the opening games of the season. And we could still do. It's game week 1. But yesterday, I think it showed very glaringly, obviously, that there is a lot of work to do in the window. And fingers crossed we could get that work done, because it was a poor performance yesterday. There's no getting past that.
Tom, what's your one key takeaway?
Yeah, one key takeaway for me is that I feel like I probably got a little bit carried away with looking at how we were during pre-season last week. I went into that game and essentially what happened was the opposite of what I was going and expecting. I was thinking we were going to go in and create a lot of chances, but be fairly open at the back, just as it looked like we had been in pre-season. But the chance creation seemed to be a lot harder. I felt like everyone's kind of passing and movement was about half a yard off yesterday, or 2 yards in some cases. And there were points in the first half especially, but even a couple in the second half as well, where the defence really bailed us out and we did look strong at the back at times. So yeah, I think, just to kind of touch on what Dana said there, there's still a lot of work to be done in the window. It would have been nice to have a striker who knew the best positions to kind of be in yesterday, because I don't think Rodgers did that. He definitely does seem like more of a winger for me. And yeah, it's going to be difficult to replace that creativity of Giles. I do think we've got players in there who can do it, but it did seem like we were a little bit rusty yesterday, and clearly a bit of a hangover from last season's continuing on.
Yeah, and I agree with you both there, because my one key takeaway was we still have a lot of work to do, and we need to still find ways to break teams down. I know it's the second game under Carrick where we haven't scored at home, right? obviously it's funny because it's back to back, given that one was Coventry, and there was some similarities from Coventry and Millwall as well, which I do want to look at a little bit later on. But I just think, there's just some work to do. I just think naturally we were a bit off tempo yesterday, which I think was natural. Some teams are really well prepared and raring to go. Some teams are just a little bit undercooked. I thought we were a little bit undercooked yesterday. I didn't think our tempo was there, and that is probably the most valuable part of and the most important part of how Boro plays. Just tempo. Like if we have our tempo right and we're able to play through the thirds, we destroy a lot of teams. But we just weren't. We just weren't 100% yesterday, and I think there was a couple of reasons why. Obviously, naturally, we need to keep investing in the market. But for right now, I'm at a place where I just think, still work to do. Can we be better in a couple of weeks' time? I think we will be. Will the team be the same as it was yesterday, by the end of August? Most likely not. So I know you can get carried away with a lot of things, but I think, it's just game week 1. It happens. We never win. See, the date that we never win on the opening day. It'll be 10 years next year, won't it? So,
on that as well, actually, that was Millwall's first win at the Riverside since April 2014. So another 9-year theme there. 9 years since their last win at the Riverside. I looked at that because Dan last week mentioned that Millwall don't have a good record at the Riverside. So I banked that, and I was like, well, there you go. There's your token win.
Yeah, well, what happened in the 14-15 season? We got to the playoff final, so potentially a good omen. I hope so. But anyway, should we chat about the game? Because Romain says first senior goal gave Millwall the 1-0 win on the opening day, but there was a lovely moment in that game, and it wasn't on the pitch. It was actually off it, where Duncan Watmore got substituted and decided to join the Middlesbrough bench instead of the Millwall one, which brought a lot of cheers from the West Stand and a good gag.
I thought I was in panto because I didn't see it. I didn't see it, so I was like, "What were we all laughing at?" Obviously, I was probably tucking into my peanut M&Ms or my M&M brownies at that point because I was a bit bored, so I just started comfort eating. But I missed that. I missed one of the best parts of the game.
It took him a minute, to really realise, and he just Middlesbrough at heart, and he doesn't need Duncan Watmore.
Bless him.
But, bless him. But then, how would you assess the performance yesterday? Because I know you were saying at the start that there's a lot more work to do. You think you underestimated the task at hand. So, how would you assess things yesterday?
It was the performance of a side that have many players playing out of position, and in a Michael Carrick team, certainly from last season, players aren't bound to the position that they play. For example, Riley McGree, stationed as a left winger, does not play as a left winger. He plays as a number 10. But I'm not really buying in on this Morgan Rogers up front experiment. And I actually think that Michael Carrick got the team selection wrong yesterday. This isn't outcome bias because I was thinking it before the game, and I probably would have thought it even if we won. I really want to see Marcus Force through the middle. I think to put Isaiah Jones on the right, Riley McGree on the left, it would have given us a bit of width because yesterday we didn't have an outlet out wide. Everything was coming central, and we were trying to drill through them through the middle, but everything was breaking down. I want to see Rogers deeper. I do agree with Tom. I think he is probably better as a winger, but I think he can also do a lot better as a number 10 as well. I think he's got the intelligence to be able to link up really well. And he drops deep anywhere, is what we've seen. But I do think Michael Carrick got the team selection wrong. Last season's team, I don't really want to compare this season's team to last season's team, but it's going to happen naturally because they set the standard, they set the marker. They were so slick and quick in their combinations because they knew each other's game. They knew where they were to be and they knew where they were going to be. And this team is very rusty within that. The combinations weren't anywhere near as slick. They kept breaking down. We kept trying to initiate 1-2s. They were getting intercepted. The passes were going astray. Players were moving beyond the ball. It just wasn't crisp. And that's why I think I underestimated the step back because in pre-season, the build-up was good. But yesterday, it really wasn't. We had 68% possession, but our XG was 0.74, which I'm actually surprised it was that high because it didn't feel like we really tested Sarkic in the Millwall goal. So it was just really frustrating to watch. And yeah, it just reinforces this message that we have an awful lot of work to do. it was a poor performance. There's no getting away from that. It was really poor, and we need to improve.
We do. Tom, why do you think Boro is still a little bit undercooked at the minute?
Well, I don't know. I think we're missing a few key players in key positions. There are obviously new players in the team, like Morgan Rogers, who's then having to play out of position as well as getting used to a new team. You got players who were just coming into the team after being kind of on the fringes last year and trying to step up and be part of that starting 11, like Dan Barlaser. You got players who were out on loan, like Coulson last season, just coming into the team. The cohesion's not going to be there as much as it was last season, and we've mentioned it a couple of times. Pre-season looked good in terms of some of the passing play. It looked like it should have been a lot quicker. And then for some reason yesterday, it seemed very slow. Like Dana just said, we were attempting 1-2s, which were just getting intercepted. I felt bad for Dan Barlaser, the amount of passes he tried, which were just getting picked out. Which, to be fair, he has to take blame for as well. But I do think some of our off the ball movement was lacking yesterday. It just seems like a kind of real lack of cohesion. And I'm not even suggesting that Millwall were much better yesterday, because they also looked like it's the first game of the season. They're probably going to improve from this point as well. Giving them credit, they were solid at the back and looked dangerous on the break. But it did look like two teams who had just come out of pre-season. And I think the best way of putting it was mentioned on BBC Tees yesterday. The more effective team won. We just didn't do anything. Some of our crossing yesterday was abysmal. And even if it had been good, Morgan Rogers isn't a striker, so he wasn't in the position to get his head on anything. And I don't particularly like Crooks on that number 10 spot either. So I can't remember seeing him close to anything either.
I forgot that he was on the pitch. I must admit, I forgot that Crooks was there. The connections just weren't there, were there? They really weren't. Everything was just that 1% off, which I suppose for some fans felt like more than that. But this is a team with very notable teething issues, and the passover from last season's team and this season's team is very obvious now, because last season's team were incredibly fun to watch and they were incredibly effective as well. And this team just, game week 1, remember, this is the very first game. They will get better, but there were obvious issues there yesterday that need to be worked on. And yeah, I reiterate, I've not criticised Carrick pretty much at all on this podcast since he's been in charge, because there's been very little to criticise, but I'm not buying into this Morgan Rogers up front experiment. I actually feel bad for him. I hope there's no character assassination of him, because he's playing a role that isn't his. And he said that he's learning as he's doing it. I just can't understand why we've got a number 9 there, perfectly capable number 9 in Marcus Force, and we're not playing him as a number 9. Like, I understand that he's effective as a right midfielder, but needs must. We don't have another striker, but we've got Marcus Force and we're playing him out wide. And the pieces of that jigsaw yesterday were all over the shop for me. I think if you move things around, the team definitely reads a lot better. You've got Marcus Force, number 9, Rani McGree on the left, Isaiah Jones on the right, Morgan Rogers through the middle. On paper, that reads a lot better. But who am I to judge?
Yeah, to be honest, I agree with you both. I think it did feel a bit clunky yesterday. I also think that Crooksy in the support striker role really just didn't work as much. I wanted him to. I think the beauty with Akpom, and you have these type of players who can play multiple positions, is just like they're able to like drop into the midfield, they're able to bring players out of position, they're able to like just create space for a forward to run in behind. And I think it was just a bit static yesterday. It was a bit frustrating because Rogers was pretty stuck in a central position, and I would have liked to seen him a bit more in that, like, the half space of the pitch, just outside of, or on that one of the wider centre backs. like to see a bit there. I like to see Crooks play a little bit more, central, try to bring players away to create the space. And also to keep wide as well. I think there was so many times yesterday where we played into Coventry's hands. I'm not Coventry, Millwall's hands. I've got Coventry on the mind because I want to talk about them in a second. But we played into their hands quite a lot yesterday, and it was frustrating. And just thought that tempo just wasn't there. But there is a reason. There's a tactical reason, but also there's many reasons why we can continuously improve. And I probably agree. I didn't think we got the selections right yesterday. And also as the game went on, I would have liked us to see us just switch up a little bit. You had the subs on there. You had the subs there to hopefully make an impact. Alex Gilbert, who was on the bench, who has had a good preseason. Martin Piero is still there. You've got Isaiah Jones. There's players there that could have probably influenced the game yesterday. I just thought we played it a little bit safe. We were 1-0 down. You may as well give it a go right now and just try and test stuff. Because the first 5 to 6 games don't really matter too much. So it's just keep testing, learn, and find the tweaks, and hopefully we can start to get going again. But there was a lot of good. I think there was some good things. And Tom, do you think they're actually? I know we're all saying we need to improve the X, Y, and Z, but do you think there was anything that we did well yesterday?
No, not particularly. Like I said, I didn't think our chance creation was great yesterday. There was a lot of trying to either force it through the middle, which was getting intercepted, or where we did go out wide, our crossing was closer to the corner flag than it was to anyone else in the box. I thought we keep coming back to it, but Morgan Rogers up front, he wasn't playing that kind of Cameron Archer role from last season and trying to get in behind. A lot of the time he was coming deep and trying to play with his back to goal. But then when he was getting pressured by one of, Millwall's massive centre-backs, his first touch was suffering as a result. And then, that puts us back, really. There was a lot of time playing in front of Millwall. And I think that was possibly a contributing factor to Barlaser having such a bad game, because he was left with so much time on the ball at times to try and pick a pass, but there was no one really free. So even if he could pass it 5 yards, it'd come back to him, and then we're back to square one. Like I said, we're about half a yard off yesterday. I don't think it was a good performance. I will credit the defence. I do think, like I said, they built us out a couple of times, even though I did feel worried every time Watmore got on the ball and started running at them. But obviously nothing kind of ever really came of that. And Dieng, I would probably say, had a decent game as well. There was nothing he could do for the goal, and commanded his box well and was able to kind of distribute well. Looked extremely calm. I didn't think we were going to see anyone in goal as calm as Zach Steffen, but Dieng, his heartbeat must be about 5 per minute or something like that. Like it's just so calm coming out with the ball. But yeah, there wasn't really too much in terms of positives to take. One, I would say, towards the end of the match was Sammy Silvera. I thought when he came on, he did look like he was going to create something, but that's about it, I can say, creatively.
Yeah, and just on Duncan Watmore, I was saying to Matt yesterday, our graphic designer, and I just said I was so glad that Duncan Watmore played yesterday, because a decent play, a player of decent end product would have probably done us 3-0. But he had the progressive runs.
Not these criticisms to poo a little Duncan.
There's not a criticism, but like he did like all the good things where, like, he was progressive, got the ball, and then the end product was just horrendous. And I was like,
it is very vintage Watmore, isn't it? To be fair,
yeah. So it's not criticism; it's just how he plays. Like, his end product's just not amazing. That's why you're in the championship, isn't it? But obviously that's like me saying that on the podcast, So, but yeah, a player of decent end product would have done us 3-0, and I'm absolutely certain of that. But anyway, so and another thing as well that I noticed from the game yesterday, obviously bar the Watmore thing, is, and then coming back from the game, I was like, I'm trying to wonder, like, oh, what went wrong? And I was like trying to notice and try and pick things apart. And I was like, I was wondering why, like, we had so much possession, we weren't creating many chances, and we didn't really look like comfortable in front of goal. We weren't creating the chance that we needed to create, and it's weird because like, this is the second time under Carrick that we haven't scored, and interestingly, it's back-to-back games that it's happened, so there must be some similarities. So I went on to Y Scout and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a look at this, and just thought, and noticed that from the Coventry game and the Millwall game, both teams played, like a 3-4. 2-1, or however you want to say it. Formations changed depending on where you are. Just rotation. It's implemented by the players itself. But I noticed there was a box midfield in both sides, and the setups are very, very similar. And the box midfield is in itself, it just gives you like a player advantage in the middle of the field. The aim is to control the central areas. And try and stop Middlesbrough from playing. So, like, Middlesbrough really do and find a lot of their play comes from like the goal kicking itself. So when Boro do get a goal kick, what you'll want to find is when Dieng gets the ball, or when Stefan had the ball last year, your aim is to try and give it to Hackney or Balassa, your two centre mids, because they help Boro in the transition so much. They're probably one of the most important part of how Boro play. And then what I noticed is both teams, Coventry and Millwall, they didn't press our centre backs at all from a goal kick. So then everyone waited, let Middlesbrough come up the pitch. They were like, you can have the ball, you can have the ball. And as soon as when Boro were in play, so like when we got into play, we would bring the ball forward. And then as soon as Hackney or Balassa received the ball, that's when the press started. So when you look at Millwall's press in itself, so what would happen was essentially just let's aim for Hackney, let's aim for Balassa, and let's stop Boro playing. And the bonus of like a box midfield itself, well, the negative really of it is that it's quite narrow and you control the central areas. But if you're able to turn Middlesbrough over, like Millwall and like Coventry did, they were able to get in behind very quickly with numbers as well. So they're able to counter attack you. They're able to find space in wide areas as well, and just try and attack Boro's fullbacks. And with that in itself, Boro need to find like different ways. And if you just want to look at like the box midfield again in action from like Millwall and Coventry, you'll notice that box is just, as soon as Mills progress a little bit further, like the wing back will have the ball. There's no real pressure, but as soon as it comes in that central area, like the Millwall press did, they would aim to do that. So Boro need to find like new ways to actually counter this now, because yesterday we had Balassa on the pitch, who isn't a progressive player. We had Crooks, who isn't a progressive player. Morgan Rogers is, but was in the wrong position. And also McGree was playing more central as well, so that'll create more space out wide to aim for Boro's wing backs as well. So going forward, we need to look and find progressive players. So if we go into the Millwall press so what we need to be able to do is, when Middlesbrough have the space, and you can click off it now, Dave, if you don't mind, is just identify and utilize our progressive players. So you look at Silvera, McGree, Hackney, you're looking at Jones, Rogers, put Force up top. You want to have players to play through this box because it's when we are trying to stick things around the tempos and off, you're able to control that central area and essentially create and control most of the game. Or a real key takeaway is just we need to find ways to beat the box, and by beating the box, you have to have progressive players. And yesterday we just didn't have a progressive player in the right area to be able to bring the ball forward and try and get the ball out wide. You can stretch teams. If you try and play narrow, you will literally just fall into the trap of playing their game. And I think Boro did that yesterday. I think we just played at their hands far too much, and they were able to pick us off on the counter attack. So next game, I would like us to maybe start with Silvera, maybe Force up top. I would like to see Rogers dropping deep, or with Alex Gilbert there, or Akpom, and just kind of move away from the crooks in the supporting striker role, because I feel like yesterday that just didn't work, and it hasn't worked because we were playing it at their hands and trying to play a bit too narrow. So it's one of those things. We'll move on from it, but Boro need to keep finding ways to beat the box, and as we become more popular, more teams will know what to do against us. But we did try something different yesterday. I want to talk about the short corners because we actually were trying short corners yesterday. Why do you think we did that, Tom? Because the standard is whip the ball at the box and just hope for the best. But Boro were trying something a little bit different yesterday. Why do you think that was?
The new ad bet on In On Lenihan to score, so they were just like trying to take any any chance of that happening away. But I think we're just trying to improve that part of our game and hopefully cause a few more goals from set pieces. We were 15th for set pieces last season in the Championship. I'd be interested to see where the promoted teams were from that, but I think it is a good opportunity to try and get some more goals from. And I can see what we're trying to do with it. We have seen it work effectively in the past. I think particularly under Karanka in the playoff season, I believe. I don't think we saw it as much in the promotion season, but I vividly remember one against a free kick against Birmingham, which was well worked, which Kike put straight at the keeper. And then later in the season, there was a corner where we beat Ipswich at the Riverside, and that's short corner taken quickly, bit of quick movement on that side, swung in, and Ayala got his head on it and scored. So we know that could work, but yesterday it was too slow. It looked like we were passing it between about 3 different people on whatever side the corner was on, trying to create that perfect pass or that perfect chance for a cross, which was just never coming. And even if we did get a chance to cross, it was usually like nowhere near anyone, because pretty much no one has the delivery of Ryan Giles. So yeah, it was a bit frustrating, that one. I think we saw it work late last season. Was it at home to Coventry? Last game of the season, did we score a fun?
Yeah,
and that was like just it was quick, kind of taken into the box. Someone managed to turn and square it across, but that was quick. This wasn't, and everything we were trying yesterday was like we were practicing it at half speed on a training ground, and it was just never going to work against Millwall.
What would you like to see from the set piece routines, Dana? Because I know the look you gave me when I mentioned short corners wasn't particularly great. So, what would you like to see from the set piece routines that Boro are trying to implement?
I'd actually like to see more front post activity, because we have Matt Crooks in the team at present, and Matt Crooks, you'd think 6'3", 6'4". I don't know how tall he is. Don't trust Google on footballers' height. But he is so much more effective from the second balls, the second contact, than direct first contact. He is the type of player that in a goal-mouth scramble can toe-put the ball home from flick-ons. It frustrates me so much when it hits the first man, because a lot of the time that is the intended area, but there's just no movement there. And a lot of the time when it is an uncontested headed clearance from the man at the front post, it's because there's just no movement. And we see that quite often with Boro. First man, uncontested clearance, headed away, start an attack for the opposition, because there's just no movement. And that really frustrates me. What frustrates me even more is when the ball goes straight into the keeper's gloves. I want to see more front post activity. I think we can have a lot of efficiency with flick-ons. We just don't see the players run into the front post necessarily. So it's frustrating. I don't actually mind short corners, so long as the man that receives the ball from the short corner whips that ball in first time, because it changes the angle. As soon as one pass becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, you might as well just give the opposition a goal kick. And last season started this trend for me, and it should have started well before that. But every time where I get a corner, there is no reaction from me, because I know it's not an advantage. You know, when teams or fans of teams, they get up, they get excited, it's an opportunity. For me, I'm like, well, nothing's coming from this. So what's the point in even getting excited or full of anticipation for it? We know what's going to happen. And a lot of the time, we don't even see a chance. I think we might have seen a half chance yesterday with Darragh Lenihan's 50p head. Got his head on it, and it skewed past the post. I thought that was the moment. I thought that was the moment for Tom, and it wasn't.
It was when he teed himself up from 40 yards. So I was like, oh, this is going to be it.
Can you imagine? Would that have counted though? Because it's not from a corner.
Yeah,
that was
Lenihan any time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I suppose in pod theme seems to be Darragh Lenihan from a corner, so it wouldn't have counted for the in pod theme.
We all expect it from a corner, but no one expects it from a 40-yard screamer, and neither did Lenihan by the looks of it, or their keeper.
It will happen at some point. I won't be surprised if that is the way that Darrell Lenihan scores for Middlesbrough Football Club. But yeah, the short corners, I don't mind as long as it's put into the box quickly. And when Boro make one pass into about 6 or 7, it just slows it down. Millwall can reset, get back into their shape, and then it's back to this, trying to pin them central and drill through them that way, which is not working. So, yeah, it sums it up, doesn't it, that the biggest reaction to something that happened in the game came from us deciding to take the corner long rather than short. So that epitomizes it, I think. And it's so funny that that corner amounted to piss all, as per usual.
Yeah, we do that every week, knock the ball in the box. So, I mean, it never works in the middle, trying something different, right?
I tell you what, Jonny, our bold prediction is faltering already on game week 1.
No. I believe in it. I'm all in. I'm all in on set pieces, and I'm all in on Darrell Lenihan scoring this season. I'm all in. Maybe we have to bring out a shirt for that, all in on Lenihan. I'm all in. I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Anyway, on a brighter note, then Sammy Silvera, I know we mentioned it a little bit earlier. He came on and he looked like a really good player, as a definite bright spark. Do you reckon he can break into the 11 a lot more? I know he's coming from the bench. He came on the left-hand side where McGree normally is. So do you think he has how do you think his minutes will change throughout the season?
I don't think he gets in there initially. I would like to see him, but he's competing with Riley McGree for a spot in the team. And I think that Riley McGree has that position himself for the foreseeable. Even though I thought at times he was bright yesterday, but he was just a little bit rusty, which really fits into the theme of Middlesbrough collectively yesterday. But Sammy Silvera is a fun player, and I'm excited about him. I think there is a gem in Sammy Silvera that I really want to see more of. But right now, it would probably mean that Riley McGree plays left back, as we saw yesterday, which that's not Riley McGree's best position. If you want to get the best out of Riley McGree, you're not going to play him left back, do you? So this goes back to the conversation that we've had of square pegs in round holes, and the pieces of the jigsaw just aren't really fitting for Boro at the moment. So I would like to see Sammy Silvera, but I'm not sure how he gets into that team. You could put him on the right, but I think he's far more dangerous from cutting inside on the left and unleashing a shot. Yeah, he had a shot yesterday. It was fairly decent, because usually when you see a Boro striker unleash a shot from that range, it skews into the River Tees. But I think he's probably most dangerous from cutting inside, unleashing a shot, and troubling defenders that way. So I would like to see him on the left, but I just don't think he gets in place of Riley McGree right now.
Okay, then. And just another player, Tom, who returned yesterday, Jonny Howson, who got a standing ovation before he even got on the pitch, which was quite funny. Obviously, Dan Balassa was playing in his position yesterday. I'm assuming that Howson comes in straight away and takes that position back now that he's fit.
I think it depends on his fitness, doesn't it? I mean, you say he's fit, but he was only on for 20 minutes or so. It might be more of a gradual return to fitness for him. I don't think Balassa did himself any favours last week, which is typical after I backed him on last week's show. No, he didn't have a good game yesterday. So if Howson was fit enough to return now and take that position back, he can't have any complaints if that does happen. But it'd be interesting to see what happens on Tuesday, especially with that cup game. If Howson or maybe even Piero gets a look in centre midfield for that game, or if Balassa retains his place, who knows? But I think a lot depends on how fit Howson actually is.
It does, and he did make a difference when he came on yesterday. He's much more of a progressive player, so kind of makes sense and feeds into the narrative that we've been saying as the podcast has gone on. But let's move on. Let's keep it positive. Let's go to the praise and place for the first time this season. The praise and place is the place. We like to give praise to a player, a coach and staff member Dana's hair, Tom's masseuse, and also and a 66 sportswear. So we've brought out another Boro Breakdown shirt for a very limited time only. It's an away kit theme, and it's based on the 2001-2002 away shirt, and it's only available for about a month and a bit, and it's absolutely stunning. You'll find the link in your podcast provider or on YouTube and on our social channels as well. £35, and it is just an absolute beauty. Dana Moll, who is in your praise and place this week?
I'm going to say Darragh Lenihan, because with each game that we see of Darragh Lenihan, he just becomes so much more of an astute signing. And it took him a while to get really up to speed, didn't it, last season? There were changes within the defence, obviously changes within the management department, the coaching department, and it didn't help him. But he honestly just looks so good. Really, really good. He is challenging Dale Fry as Boro's best defender, in my opinion. And he's just so composed. Whenever he takes the ball in positions where anxiety may mount for other championship centre halves, he is so zen. He's so composed. He knows exactly what to do with it. You can tell he used to be a midfielder back in the day. He just gets better. And defensively as well, he's just very, very good. He knows when to make those interceptions, when to make those tackles. He was very solid yesterday, and he just looks every bit of a good signing. So Darragh Lenihan gets my pick for praise this week.
All in on Lenihan. Tom, who gets your place in the praise and place?
I think I'm also going to have to go all in on Lenihan here, because I think he's the only one who actually deserves it from yesterday. Like I said earlier, I thought Dieng looked good, but I feel like that would be a very low bar to put Dieng in the praise and place after yesterday, because he didn't really have a lot to do other than that one-on-one save, which was quality.
That was good. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
In fact, we'll put him in there as well, just for that save. But Lenihan, he's very, very consistent. I mean, other than the start of last season, where I don't think anyone played well, I don't think I've seen him drop many bad performances at all. I think as a captain stepping in while Howson was injured, he does the job extremely well. You can see the effect of his leadership on the team, constantly talking, and like Dana said, there he's just very assured whenever he's on the ball. Or one thing I noticed yesterday was when he's going in for a header, it's not even that he's necessarily out jumping the player, that the opposition player that's going for it. He just reads the path of the ball so well. So there was one point where he was actually 2 yards behind the player who missed the header, because he knew that was going to go over his head and straight on his head. It was interesting to see just that sort of judgment of the flight of the ball. Really, very impressive. So yeah, Darragh Lenihan for me as well.
Yeah, and I went all in on Lenihan as well. I feel like we should start comparing notes more, because I thought he was great yesterday. Definitely Boro's best. I know Denny is saying he's challenging Dale Fry. I think he is Boro's best defender.
I wouldn't argue against that. I wouldn't argue.
He's fantastic. A real leader in the team, and he's just very impressive yesterday. So yeah, congratulations to Darragh. We are all in on you. So yeah, congratulations to that. But let's move on. Let's move to podcast questions. So every week you get the chance to send us your questions via Twitter, the Boro_breakdown, and the email, the BoroBreakdown@hotmail.com, or by joining our Telegram chat with over 360 Boro fans chatting probably nothing about Boro, to be honest, but we do chat about Boro sometimes. But the first question this week, and I've kind of set up the 3 themes this week, because when we looked at our questions, there was definitely some, similarities from supporters, and one of them was around Dan Barlaser, and is he good enough to play in the current position and the current role, and also a little bit about Jonny Howson as well. So Dana, is Dan Barlaser good enough to play in the current position and role?
Absolutely. Absolutely he is. I don't think it's necessarily fair to write him off now, because remember last season he had a very, very good game against Luton where he controlled the game, and he was fantastic in midfield alongside Hayden Hackney. Let's not forget that. So that's what Dan Barlaser can offer us. We've seen it mostly in glimpses and then that game as well. So we need to see it more from him. But someone in our Telegram chat said it probably summed it up the best, that if the team are off as a collective, Dan Barlaser will not look good in it because he needs that movement. He needs that movement in behind. He's got a very, very good eye for a pass, very good vision, does Dan Barlaser. But if those players around him aren't making those runs, what do you expect from him? He can't tell his teammates where to be. I feel like they need to be there already. And I don't think that it's necessarily a good base for him if the team aren't performing as a collective. So he's absolutely good enough. I would not write him off because he's talented, and it would pain me if he doesn't perform well overall in Middlesbrough, because I've liked Dan Barlaser for a while since he was at Accrington Stanley. So I do think he's a very talented player. We just need to see the team as a collective perform better, and then I think we'll see him perform better too. So don't write Dan Barlaser off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think interestingly, if you look on like FBref as well, like his progressive runs is pretty terrible, but his progressive passes are absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So it really does feed in that narrative as well. Like if you have a team that moves and is moving and trying to get in good places, he will find you. So play to his strengths as well. The next question is it probably the most important question I'm going to ask you all day, and it's palm on a bun. Is it worth £5.10? Tom,
£5.10.
Yes, you had a Palmore last night. Of course, you didn't. You said it wasn't very good, but wasn't at the ground. I must have to clarify that. But is £5.10 worth it for a Palmore and a bun?
You know what? Yesterday was actually one of the rare occasions where I had one, and it was very nice. So I'm going to say yes.
Was it in the ground?
Yeah.
It's too hit and miss with their bechamel sauce.
When you look at the price of a Palmore, that's usually like what, £8, £9 anywhere, even for a half. Shot that in a bun, £5.10's like much lower than what you expect, even if it is a smaller size.
Yeah. See, I'm not a fan. I used to be a big fan, and then I have a personal agenda here because they changed the buns to like a normal bun to a crushed sesame bun, and I'm allergic to sesame, so I can't have them anywhere now. So
sorry,
they're not
I don't know
worth
why
it.
I'm laughing at that.
It's funny, don't worry. But it's just not worth it, But I do want to give a shout to a specific fan dinner me and you go to every match day, every home match day. He's returned, hasn't he? The old Mackham, and it was fantastic service yesterday, I thought. What did you get? Did you get your standard chips and curry, or was it just the?
I didn't get anything. No, I didn't get anything because I had scranned 2 cheese sandwiches in a brioche bun before the game, so I wasn't hungry. But my dad got a cheeseburger, I think. But yeah, you cannot top the Mackham. Teesside's favourite Mackham, I think. Forget Grand Leadbitter. he doesn't matter compared to the Mackham in the burger van on the leeway. Yeah, it was good to see him back.
Yeah, on the leeway as well. Yeah, so if you're coming down from the Navi to the last one on the right hand side, isn't it? Such a good time, honestly. I mean, I should be paid to talk about that, but I'm not. I'm just talking the goodness of my own heart. But anyway, let's move on to less important agenda points. Transfers, Tom. Do we need to recruit more than a left back and a striker?
Yeah, I think we do. I think obviously we need a first choice left back and a first choice striker. I think we actually need 2 strikers to add into this team, and something I'd like to see. And I think this very much depends on if Piero stays or not. I think he will, but I think there's always that question there of like, will we sell him on to anyone? He's 4th choice centre midfielder at the moment. If we were to get rid of Piero, I would like to see a proper kind of defensive midfielder brought in to play alongside either Hackney or Barlaser, really. And I know we try and get our midfielders to carry the ball and be progressive. I still like the ability to play out from the back in a centre defensive midfielder, but I would also like someone who's going to be strong in the tackle and very much kind of like Adam Clayton, not not afraid to take a yellow card to break down an attacking move, which I think we were guilty of not doing a few times yesterday.
I don't know what it was, but I instantly, when you said Adam Clayton there, I instantly thought of Sheffield Wednesday, where like he was on the line, he tried to do like a rugby scrum to try and get the ball out.
That was funny.
Good old Adam Clayton. Anyway, let's move on to news and link list. Because Dana, you are taking charge and taking lead, shall we say, on the linked players from the week. And Boro have been linked with quite a few, right? So who have we been linked with, and what do you think of them?
Yeah, it went quiet for a while, and all of a sudden we've been linked with 4 players. First, the outgoings. Obviously, Matthew Hoppe joined the San Jose Earthquakes. Until January, I think their season obviously works very differently in the MLS, but that deal has an option to buy. So I think it's safe to say that we are going to say goodbye to Matthew Hoppe very soon. Well, in terms of incomings, we've been linked with Josh King, obviously former Manchester United, Bournemouth, Watford striker, currently playing for Fenerbahce, although the latest reports are that he's set to sign for Luton. So that might be ticked off very soon or crossed out very soon. Arthur Souza, striker from Corinthians, young player, only 20 years old. He's only played once for Corinthians. He's mostly played for their under-20s. He's been linked with us. Reports in Brazil are suggesting that Boro are expected to make a formal offer in the coming days. Then Gremio's central midfielder Bitello has also been linked with Boro in Brazil as well. The report states that Gremio would only sanction a deal in January, whereas Boro want Bitello now. So I feel like that's past Boro by. I have seen reports suggesting that he's Arsenal bound. So talent ID check there for Boro if he is set to sign for Arsenal. And then Matthias Ablein from Stade Rennais, striker, available on loan. Reports in L'Equipe, who are a big French paper, suggest that Sunderland are also interested in him as well. So 4 players linked with Boro this week. 3 of them strikers, interestingly, and 1 is a central midfield player. So expect movement in the striker department very soon, I think.
Any realistic ones? No. Any would I know? I mean, it's very hard to see a Corinthians player who's played 1 game. I mean, Wisecout will not help us much there, will it?
No.
So, very much Brazilian fever on that one. But yeah, is there any that you kind of like the look of, or think that's realistic?
No, you know what? It's weird because with Arthur Souza and Bitello and probably Ablaid as well, they just seem like they're obviously very young players. With Souza, I wouldn't be surprised if we do sign him. This is the 20-year-old striker from Corinthians. If he becomes an under-21 player, I just can't really see, given the fact that he's only played once for Corinthians, I just don't see him being a first-team fixture if he does join Boro. So it is an interesting quartet of players. Josh King, obviously very experienced, but the other 3 very inexperienced. They just strike me as players that might end up being probably not Bitello if he's joining Arsenal, but players for the youth team maybe.
Cool. Okay then. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to Tuesday night now, where Boro are in action in the Carabao Cup against Neil Warnock's Huddersfield. We're backed by 2,300 Boro fans on Tuesday night, which is fantastic. And Boro trying to get to the second round of the Carabao Cup for the first time in 3 years.
Wow.
We've got some fantastic record there. I mean, the teams we played Barnsley twice and lost both, which is quite funny.
That's not a surprise, really, though, is it?
Yeah, it's not. No, I think it's, and then the year prior to that, the 1920, we actually lost against Crewe at home on penalties as well. So we haven't made it to the third round in about 4 or 5 years, which is interesting. Anyway, to hear more about Neil Warnock's Huddersfield, we spoke to Brady from And He Takes That Chance podcast to get a little bit more insight.
Hello, Brady here from the And He Takes That Chance Huddersfield Town fan podcast. Yeah, thoughts on the summer so far? Not a great summer. I mean, unbeaten in pre-season. We've done the Neil Warnock Classic, go down to Devon and Cornwall, go to Neil's for a barbecue, play some Sunday League teams, win quite handsomely. In fairness, it's all about getting the players together and bonding, as I'm sure Middlesbrough fans will be all too familiar with. In terms of incoming players who've excited us, it's not very exciting at the moment. I think that's kind of the problem. So we've brought in a second-choice goalkeeper and as a free agent, Chris Maxwell, who's very experienced and, to be fair, as a second-choice keeper, could be a lot worse. And we've also brought in Tom Edwards, who's a right back on loan from Stoke. Seems like a very Neil Warnock type of player. Seems like he's happy to stick his head in for just a winner throw-in. The funny thing was, when he was announced, we didn't really know much about him, and then in his interview with the club, he admitted that he's got a really good long throw-in, and he's learnt from Stoke's throw-in specialist legend Rory Delap. So expect that from a Neil Warnock team. We really need another striker and a midfielder. So I think it's a case of, although the signings aren't exactly sexy, but I think it's a classic case of, if we got that striker and midfielder that we need, and then brought in his additions, it'd look like a good window. So yeah, just one of them really. You can't really get excited by a second choice goalkeeper, can you? But we did need a right back, so that's useful to have. How's Warnock setting us up this season? So we're playing like a 4-2-3-1. So Danny Ward's up front, and then we've got kind of Karoma and Sorba Thomas on the flanks, with Jack Radoni in the middle, sometimes Brahima Diarra. We're more like a 3-5-2 off the ball as well, but it's a classic, like we do the man marking, as again, I'm sure you guys are familiar with, having a season and a half with Neil Warnock. It's all, it's all fairly standard. But yeah, it's going okay. Obviously, we've lost 3-1 to Plymouth, so Huddersfield Town Twitter is in a bit of a meltdown at the moment, but let's judge it after the transfer window shuts, because I think the club have made it very clear that we've got a few additions to make. So I don't think you can, in fairness, I don't think you can really judge Neil and the team until the window shuts. Predictions for this one? I really don't know, because Huddersfield have a classic kind of chuck away any cup games to concentrate on the league, but because Neil Warnock's in charge, I'm not sure if we will do that. I would expect Chris Maxwell to play, probably rest Lee Nichols, and give some of the fringe players a go. Anyone that stands out particularly for you guys that would be interesting? Probably Carl Hudlin. In case your listeners didn't know, Neil Warnock has in his ranks a 6'9" striker, Kyle Hudlin, who's actually, in fairness to him, looked quite impressive in pre-season. So I wouldn't be surprised if he starts. Kean Harrett, who's another young lad, he is, he's looked impressive in pre-season, another striker. So wouldn't be surprised if maybe we see that 3-5-2 against you guys. But this is kind of the issue with the team. We don't have a lot of squad depth at the moment, because we've sold a lot of players to hopefully bring in that striker and midfielder. So a tough one to call. I don't think there'll be much changes from the lineup against Plymouth, to be honest, but we shall see. But no, thanks guys for having me on, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much for that, Brady. So Tom, Cup fever put at Huddersfield. What do you think? Do you think it's a perfect time for Boro to make some changes and give some players a chance to shine?
I'm torn on that, because, as I mentioned earlier, one of our problems yesterday was the lack of cohesion. I don't think we're going to do that by rotating the squads too much. That said, we could try and get the balance of the squad right, at least in this game. I would take Crooks out and put Silvera in. Maybe look at playing a three of Silvera, McGree and Rodgers behind Marcus Force and go with that setup. But other than that, I think you maybe try and play as similar a team as possible and kind of gain that cohesion. Although, like we said earlier, I think centre midfield a lot is going to rely on how fit Howson is. If he needs the minutes, a cup game might be the ideal place to swap him in for Barlasser.
Yeah, it'd be the same for Coburn and potentially Akpom as well. Obviously, I know there's always that rumour about Akpom potentially leaving. So do you want to play him or not? But perfect time to give minutes. So I agree with that. But let's move on to predictions as well, Dana. How are you feeling about this one? Can Middlesbrough make to the first to the second round for the first time in 3 years? Can we do that? Can we?
I mean, based on Huddersfield's defending against Plymouth yesterday, then maybe. I mean, Ballymumba's goal was a great solo effort, but then when you look at it again, it was the parting of the Red Sea, really, wasn't it? The Huddersfield defence just backed off. You said that he was playing on amateur mode. Absolutely was. It was terrible defending the first goal from Hillick defending was terrible as well. But Kyle Hudlin, by the way, was a former Boro target, if reports are to be believed. The 6'9" striker was linked with us when Warnock was in charge, I think, when he was at Solihull Moors, Hudlin. So a very interesting one there. I think we will. I would like to see us get through, and I agree with Tom about maybe not changing it so much. Giving maybe Silvera a chance, maybe bring in Jones, Howson for fitness, but largely keep the team the same and hope that we can find that extra step or that next step towards clicking and being a cohesive unit. So I am going to go prediction-wise 2-1 Boro and goal scorers. I'm going to go Gilbert. I think Gilbert will score, and also Silvera.
Alex Gilbert going full Gilbert on Tuesday night. Tom, what's going to be your predictions? Dana's go for a 2-1 win. What do you think?
I also had 2-1, but I'm now feeling like being different and saying 2-0. The only reason I was going to say 2-1 is it would be written for them to score off a long throw to a 6'9" striker. But yeah, we'll go with 2-0. And Force and McGree to get the goals.
Okay. I'm going to go 1-0 win, and we're going to score from the short corner, and Vandenberg's going to score from in the back post. That's going to be my prediction. So there you go. Lenihan's going to flick on. We all think he's going to score, and Vandenberg's going to slide in and just like stop us again.
Shithouse Island candidate that would be.
That would be. I'm very excited to bring that back this season as well. To be honest. But guys, that's it. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, to the listeners and the viewers, thank you very much for listening to us and watching as well. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, a subscription, and all that kind of fun stuff. It helps us get found and charted. And, you know, it's great just to see us in the charts. But for right now, the Boro's opening day blues continue. It's square pegs in round holes and box midfields. But will Boro bounce back? Only time will tell. This is the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and that was our Boro Match Day Chatter in a pod.